My thoughts have changed on homeschooling a lot in the past year, and I really didn't understand how much they had changed until I had a conversation with someone that I met up with back in April. And after I uttered these words about homeschooling, I thought, wow, I have really changed my mind on some things. And so in today's video, I'm going to share with you what has changed. And then I also just want to talk about how we decided to homeschool in the first place and also our curriculum. So we have gone through the curriculum in the past 4 years. I think we've done like 5 or 6 different types of curriculum. So I'm going to talk about all of that. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. Welcome back to episode 2 of this podcast style YouTube video. I hope that you're able to just plug in some headphones and get to whatever you need to do around the house or wherever you're at, and you can just listen on the go. I got lots of great feedback from last week's video that you enjoyed the format, and so I'm just gonna go for it. It works well for me and it works well for you, and I feel like I can just give a lot of good information this way. And a side note here, we are having the Blue Angels in town, and they are right above my home. And so I keep having to like stop the video and start it again. And I thought maybe, I heard them practicing this morning, and I thought, well, maybe this afternoon I could get a video in. Maybe they would be done practicing, but they're not. They're still going. And so every once in a while you might hear a roar of a sound. I will try to turn it off, but when that comes, just bear with me. So anyways, hopefully it won't be too bad or too distracting, but let's go ahead and jump in. So this episode, I really hope is an encouragement to those of you who are currently homeschooling, and maybe you're feeling a little overwhelmed, because I know how that feels as a homeschooling mom. Maybe you're just not feeling confident in your ability to homeschool your kids. So hopefully I can be an encouragement to you, give you some practical tips today. My goal is not to persuade anyone to become a homeschooler or to make anyone feel bad for choosing to send their kids to school. But if you are thinking about homeschooling and you feel called to that, I hope that today will also be an encouragement to you. Whenever someone asks me about homeschooling, I'm always like, yes, homeschool your kids. But I know that it's a very personal decision, and I understand why some families choose not to and some families can't. And so please don't take this as me condemning anyone for different choices that you might make. I'm talking about homeschooling today, but I do believe, this podcast is for homemakers, and I do believe that part of being a homemaker can include homeschooling. And so that's why I'm going to talk about it today. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. So last April, I met up with someone. I actually ran into her. It was an old classmate of mine, so I hadn't seen her in over 20 years. And so we were catching up, and how are you? What are you up to? That type of deal. And of course, I told her that we are homeschooling. I'm homeschooling my 2 children. And her response was, oh, well, we had some relatives who homeschooled their kids, but the kids didn't really do any schoolwork. They didn't really learn much, and it just was not a good experience. So we don't really think homeschooling is a good option. And then her next phrase was, at least you were a teacher, because I had taught for 9 years, so at least you're qualified to be a homeschooler, to homeschool your kids. And I paused for a second, and then the next words that came out of my mouth, I was really surprised, but it came out anyways, and I said, I used to think the same way, that I was qualified to be a homeschooler because I was a teacher. But the truth is that I know my children better than any teacher will ever know them. And that's what qualifies me to teach them. And I was like, wait, did I just really say that? But I did. And afterwards, after that conversation, I did really think about it. And I was like, my thoughts have changed so much within the past 4 years that we have been homeschooling, because when I first was thinking about homeschooling my son, I had actually gone to a homeschool informational meeting, and that was one of the things that they had said. They had said, well, we believe that parents are their first teachers, parents are their best teachers, and that nothing in the classroom or no teacher is going to teach their children as well as a parent will. And I remember walking away from that meeting thinking, no, I was a teacher. I know that there are really good teachers in schools, and I was a little offended that she would even say that. But now I truly believe that. I believe that I am my child's my children's best teacher because I do know them better than anyone else. And I literally had to take the teacher out of me in order to be a better homeschooling mom, which sounds crazy to me, but I had to stop trying to recreate the classroom at home in our dining room. And I had to really think about my child and how does my child best learn and how can I best teach them? And so that has totally just transformed the way that we do homeschooling. And it's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful change. And the first few years we really, really struggled. And I truly believe we struggled partly because I was just trying to be a teacher. And I was trying to take the things that I had learned in the classroom and just bring it home. But the truth is that when you homeschool, you're not trying to recreate the schoolroom. You are teaching, you're educating your children at home, of course, in the basics and, all the subjects, but also just in life skills and all of the wonderful things that you as a parent can teach your child. And so I've seen those benefits in the past few years. So I have a bunch written down. So let me just go ahead and talk about it. I first started out homeschooling our son because I was still at home with my youngest, who was 2 at the time. And so we thought, well, since she's still at home and not in school, we'll just keep him home. I'll homeschool him. We will keep on just doing the homeschool thing until my kids are school age. Then I'll go back to work and we'll put our kids in school. And so that was the thought. Then 2020 happened, and we all know about 2020. I won't get into all of that because I know that can be kind of controversial, but everyone was at home anyways. And then there was just such uneasiness about everything and so many different mandates and things. And we were like, let's just keep him at home another year and we'll take it a year at a time. And so that's what we did. And we were kind of just like, well, we might send him back, we might not. This past year, we have finally decided we are a homeschooling family. We are not going to send our kids to school. Unless something drastic happens, our goal is to keep our kids in a homeschool environment until they graduate, unless something else, like I said, big happens. But we've just found that we love the flexibility that homeschool gives. So I listed out several things. Number one is slower mornings. So we don't have to rush around and try and get out the door and all of that. My kids can get up slowly. They can eat breakfast and they clean up after breakfast. They have their morning chores and then they get to play around. Sometimes they'll go outside if the weather is nice. Sometimes they'll just do things indoors. And then we will start school, usually sometime around 9 o'clock. It's not exactly 9 o'clock. It kind of depends on if I have work to do or if we're cleaning or something like that. But it's just a slow morning. We don't have to rush out the door. On Wednesday nights, we go to church and it is a little bit later. And so the kids don't get into bed until around 9 o'clock. So they get to sleep in the next day. And we don't have to worry about, an early morning. So we love that. Another thing is we're done early. So usually we're done by lunchtime. And as long as they get everything done that they're supposed to with their schoolwork, which usually that's what happens. Sometimes it's a little bit that we have to do after lunch, but for the most of the time, school is done by noon, which is wonderful. It's just so freeing because we can have our afternoons to do whatever else needs to be done. Another thing we love about homeschooling is we have the ability to go places during the day when it's not as busy. So like just a really quick example, yesterday we went to the library at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So we were done with our schoolwork, we'd eaten lunch, and we went there and it was so quiet. There was hardly anyone in the library and my kids were able to go and they have little magnetic tiles and some different blocks that are kind of special that they have at the library, and my kids were able to play with those. They were able to look at the books and all the things, and we just sat there and enjoyed the peace and quiet and being able to just get out when there wasn't a lot of people. So that's just one little thing. But even like going grocery shopping, I can go grocery shopping during the day with my kids, and we're not there when it's like super busy and a bunch of people. So that's just one of the things we really like about homeschooling, that we have that ability to get out and go do things. Now I will say I do get irritated sometimes when we're like at different places and they'll say to my kids, why aren't you in school? Or what grade are you in? Just kind of like why are you out and about in the world, in the public? You're supposed to be in school type deal. And I know people are just doing it out of curiosity. And sometimes I will even just like not go in public until around like 1 o'clock-ish. And I've noticed that we get a lot less comments when we go after 1. But if we go earlier in the day, then people are like, what are you doing? Why aren't you in school? And so we explain it, and we try to be gracious, but sometimes it's just like, yeah, there's another way to do things. Kids don't have to be in a school classroom every day. Another aspect of homeschooling that we have just really embraced is that there's not just an emphasis on school, but it's an emphasis on home. So we're learning just life skills that my kids are going to need. My kids know how to do the laundry. They know how to sweep the floor and wipe the table. So those skills are super important, and we have the time to teach those to our kids because they're at home with us throughout the day. We do a lot of cooking in the kitchen together, and they know how to make different things. So I just find that is very valuable. Another thing that we love about homeschooling is my kids are with me like literally all the time. And there's a passage in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy where it talks about teaching your kids about God when you sit down and when you rise up. So basically, you are teaching your kids all the time, every chance that you get as you're walking along with them. And I feel that as a homeschooling mom, I had the opportunity to do that more than if they were in school all day, and because they're with me. And so they can ask me random questions that pop into their heads. They don't have to wait until later or ask someone else that may not have the same belief system as me. So I find that that is another reason we love homeschooling. Also, some other thoughts on homeschooling that have changed for me is completing the curriculum doesn't equal learning. So we can get through a whole book throughout a year. That doesn't necessarily mean that my child has learned anything. So last year specifically, we were getting through this math curriculum, and we were doing everything that we were supposed to do in the curriculum, but my child did not have basic math facts down and was struggling with those facts because I was emphasizing the curriculum versus just understanding the math. And so I literally stopped doing the curriculum a little over halfway through the school year, and we just drilled math facts. And they started learning better, and we ditched the curriculum, which is kind of crazy to think about, but they progressed in their math by just letting go of the curriculum. And so I have really just changed my mind on that. Like, education and learning is the goal. It's not passing a worksheet or passing a test or a quiz. And I've given up on grades. Like, I used to think, oh, I had to give my kids a grade because that's what I knew as a teacher. You have to give grades to show that the child has learned. And you don't. As a homeschooling mom, you know what your kids know and what they've learned. You don't have to have them regurgitate the information on a sheet of paper, on a test. And so that has been life-changing for me, viewing homeschooling more as education and learning versus just getting through a curriculum. Also, last year, I read a book called The 4-Hour School Day by Dorenda Wilson. She is was a homeschooling mom. I don't think she homeschools anymore. I think all her children are grown. But she just talks about how in the early years, the emphasis really is on reading and writing and arithmetic, those three, basics. And then the science and the history, you can learn about them, but you're not going to emphasize them until later on, like junior high and high school. And right now, we read a lot of books about history. We read a lot of books about science. We do science experiments, and we watch YouTube videos about things. We go out in nature and discover things. We talk about the weather, and we talk about things that happen around us. My kids love going to the library and picking out books, and a lot of times we will get historical books. And so we get to talk about things that have happened in history and read about them. But we're not necessarily like sitting down with a specific curriculum on the history of such and such. And that has been really good. And my kids have really embraced that and love that. Before, history and science was like such just a chore to get through. And it wasn't fun for them. It wasn't fun for me because I was like, sit down, listen. Okay, we got to write this down. We got to write that answer. Just trying to get them to remember all these facts. And it wasn't working. They didn't like it. And, they weren't understanding what we were going through anyways. And so like just recently, we did a Hawaii day. Okay, so we checked out a book about Hawaii, a few books, and we did some coloring pages where they colored the flag of Hawaii and the flower of Hawaii, the state flower. We did a map of Hawaii and they painted around where the water is, and then we labeled it with the Pacific Ocean and the capital and those types of things. And my kids said it was so much fun. Oh, and we bought some coconuts too. And we figured out how to put a straw in them, and then we figured out how to cook the coconut meat, and it was so much fun. But at the same time, they were learning. And I could have just done the curriculum book where we read about Hawaii, but it wouldn't have been the same. And so just thinking about educating them in a different way versus just going through the book, the curriculum, really just made a huge difference in my kids enjoying school and me enjoying it as well. So I feel like I've shared a lot of random thoughts in this video, but some of my favorite homeschool resources to go to. So if you are a homeschool mom, I definitely recommend listening to the podcast Little by Little Homeschool by Lee. I can't remember her last name, but she has been such an encouragement to me. I love listening to her podcast. And then also Dorenda Wilson, she has a podcast. I don't listen to it very often, but her two books, the one that I mentioned before, The 4-Hour School Day, and then she has another one called The Unhurried Homeschooler, and it's a really short, easy read. Both of the books are really easy to read, but the second one is just a super short book. And those two books were such an encouragement to me. I love her perspective on homeschooling, and I think that's what has kind of helped me as I have homeschooled my kids and helped me kind of change my thoughts. And I have to say that, like I said, the first few years were a struggle fest. And it was just really hard to get my kids excited to learn and then get them to just like sit still and, do what they're supposed to do. And I fought against that. But then when I kind of let that go and was like, okay, we're going to relax a little here. We're just going to focus on learning instead of all of the extra classroom type things. That's when we really fell into our groove and where we really enjoyed homeschooling. And so if you're kind of struggling, I encourage you to check out those other resources. I will leave them linked below so that you can check them out as well. And just breathe. God has called you to be the parent to your children. And if you have chosen to homeschool them, that is a very big decision and it's a wonderful decision. And just know that you can do this. And I'm rooting for you. I will give you whatever advice I can, but I'm still learning as well. And I do want to talk about the curriculum too, because I think it was Danielle had asked what we do for curriculum. So we have gone through so many different ones, and it can be so overwhelming, especially if you look online. And so I would suggest, if you can, go to a store and look at the curriculum in person. That's what really helped me. We have a Christian bookstore called Mardel, and they have so many different homeschooling options. Some are Christian and some are not, but you can go and you can flip through the books. And that's what I did. I just spent a whole afternoon. I told my husband, I was like, I just got to go down there and I just got to look at it all. And so that's what I did. I went through, picked up books and just looked through it, read through it. And did it look overwhelming to me? Or did it look like, okay, I could do this type deal? Because for 2 years, we used what was called the Life Pack curriculum. And the first year, it worked really well for us. The second year, for one child, it was very overwhelming. And it was a little disjointed. And I also found that there were some typos in the curriculum. And I just was less and less impressed with it as we went through it. And so I knew I wanted to try something different. And so I needed something that was just like a page each day type deal. And so that's what we have changed to. And instead of doing like all one curriculum for all the subjects, I've really just kind of piecemealed it and said, this is what works for spelling, this is what works for math, and that kind of deal. So just real quickly to show you what we're doing this year, we are doing Evan Moore for reading. And so far it's been really good. We have loved it. It has a short story. Some of them are nonfiction, some of them are fiction, and then there are lots of different things to go over in the pages. So Some of it is just questions. Some of it is talking about sequence of events. Some of it is like, here's rhyming words and word families. And so far that has been really good. We've also been using Evan more for spelling and writing. And again, this has been really good. It's 1 page a day, and my son doesn't feel overwhelmed with it. And he feels like he can do this on his own, which we love. You know, sometimes he'll ask me some questions, but it's not like he has to have me right there next to him for every step of the way. And that's kind of how it was with LifePack. We are using this one. It's called Teacher Created Resources for Handwriting. He's doing cursive. And so far that's been really good as well. And then for math, we decided to do master books. I read a lot of reviews. I liked how it looked on the inside. And so it's really about 1 to 2 pages a day, which is so much better than LifePack, because he was having to do 3 to 4 pages a day, and it was just a whole page of math facts, and he would open it up and just feel defeated and be like, I can't do it. And so that was so frustrating. And I would even just like mark out half of it and have him only do half, but it was still so much, and he just felt like he couldn't do it. But this is a lot more doable for him. And then there's also a grammar book, and I forget what it is. I think it's also an Evan Moore curriculum. So that's what we're choosing to do for homeschool. And then kindergarten, I have a couple of digital downloads. One is called Ready for Reading, and then another one is called Math for Kindergarten, I think. But again, those are just like some digital downloads that I'd use with my son, and then we're probably gonna bring in some more things as she finishes those, because she's gonna get through with them pretty quickly. And then we're also using Classical Conversations. So we are a part of a co-op, and we just started it this year. We're really excited about it. So anyways, I don't have much to say about it because we're just getting into it and everything. But that's basically my thoughts. I feel like I could go on and on, but I don't want to make this too long for you. I hope that you enjoyed this episode 2. Like I said, this is not always going to be about homeschooling. If you do have topics that you would like for me to talk about on the podcast, let me know, and I will definitely do my best to do episodes where I answer your questions or talk about different topics that you would like. But thanks for joining me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.